Hey guys, welcome to your second FlashPunk tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at moving images around on the screen. So we're going to do a few things today. First off, from the last tutorial, I want to make sure that your super is calling 400, 330 and your screen scale is 2. And we're going to create a couple new classes today. So if you want to minimize that, first up is what we're going to call test world, base world. Let's go test world. Alright, so test world is a class that Sprites is going to extend one of the FlashPunk classes. So you can type extends world, and if you hit enter, it will populate that. In the last tutorial, it wasn't able to populate all my stuff. It was a simple close FlashPunk, restart it, and it started working again. So if you have that issue, that's what's going on. So this test world right here is world, and what we're going to do is we're going to do trace world init, which is short for initialize. And if we run it, we will not see anything down here. The reason why is we actually have to tell FlashPunk that the world is a new test world. So right here we're setting the world to it, and then it creates a new world and sets it as a current world inside FlashPunk. So what are worlds? Worlds are the equivalent to, if you've ever used Unity, they have their scene engine. GameMaker has a room engine, and it is basically a way to separate levels and menus and all that. So if you have like your main menu, that would be a world. If you have a level, that would be a world. Even a select screen, like off of the menu, could be a separate world depending on how you structure your code. And this makes it really easy to make games with, because you can create different worlds that do different things. A menu, a select screen, level 1, level 2. And there's tons of benefits with it. Alright, and you're like, okay, I just want to draw an image. Okay, but we need to create one more class, and we're going to call this ship. Alright, and I'm going to delete all this up here, and we're going to extend entity. Make sure that you do extends. I say extend, but it's with an S in FlashPunk. So right here we have an entity, and trace ship created. Alright, and if we were to run it, you would figure out that it's not actually going to do anything. That's because we have to add it to the test world. So we do add new ship. And now main is going to come through, and it's going to say, okay, make the size of the screen this big, scale it by 2, create the new world, and then it creates the world, and the world says, oh hey, add the ship, and then the ship says, oh hey, let's trace that, and it comes out, and it comes out, and it comes out, and then the game runs. So you see ship created. Okay, so right now we don't see anything. And what I'm actually doing is I'm emulating the tutorial. So if you go to useflashpunk.net, which is where we got FlashPunk in the last tutorial, and you go to the tutorials tab, and you go to FlashPunk Basics, you will see everything that I'm pretty much covering in this, with a few extra little things here and there. But what we're going to do is we're going to save this graphic by Jared Cohen, who's the guy that messaged me in the last video, actually. Save it in Learning FlashPunk source, and you should see it inside your source folder right here as sample sprite. Alright, so what we need to do here is, if we actually want to get this sprite in there, we need to generate the embed code, which is just right click, generate embed code, and it puts this embed code in. So when your game actually runs, it's inside of this bin folder, and it's a Swift file, SWF, and if you double click the Swift file, you'll see that it pops up our game, based off of the last compile. So what this embed here is doing is it is embedding that sprite into that Swift file, so it has access to it. It actually has to save the entire image to the Swift, and that's what this line does. Alright, but just doing this isn't enough. We actually have to save it to a variable so we can use it in our program. So private const, we're going to make it a constant because we don't want anything ever saving over this image, because if you're to change it or like overwrite it, then you'd lose access to the image, and that's bad. And we're going to create or make it the type class. So it's not super obvious why it's a class to people who are coming into programming, and it's kind of complicated. So just accept that you use a class here, and that's how it works. So now that we've got the sprite, and the reason why I did all caps is because it's a constant. Typically programmers like putting constants in all caps so they know that it's a constant, because if you have all your different variable types exactly the same, you might not understand which ones are which without actually hovering over them and being like, okay, it's private const sprite. So there's that. Now we're going to create a private var sprite, and it's going to be lowercase, and it's going to be of type image. And we can either set it to a new image right here, or we can set it to a new image inside here. I'm just going to do it up here. New image, and it needs a source. And you see that it's got this wildcard. That means you can put in any type here, and if it's a valid type, it'll work, and if it's not, it won't. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but it does accept a class, which would be this, and it saves it to the image here. So we've got the image saved to a variable, and then we took that variable and actually created an image variable out of it. There's a lot of variables here. Blech. So we've got the actual FlashPunk recognized image type saved into Sprite. So let's actually assign this to the ship now. So what you can do is you can do graphic is equal to sprite. And graphic is a variable that is inside entity. Entity's got a lot of variables. If you want to ever go into a class, click on it and press F4, and it'll bring you to the class. Or if you ever like want to go to a specific function, like this add function, you can press F4 on that, and it'll bring it to world and then add. So entity has quite a few variables: visible, collidable, x, y, width, height, origin x, origin y. There's more, but oh, render target. There's quite a few, but those are the main ones that you use. There's also private and protected variables inside entity, and we can get more into those later on. But for now, I want to run this and see that graphic is being updated. Okay, so you see that it's this big. If you actually look at the image, open, you'll see that it's about half that size, and that's because, oops, and now it finally opened. That's because we're doing the screen scale 2 here. So if we did 1, you'll see that it only does this, but it's only that big because we're literally multiplying the pixels by 2, or now by 3. And that makes it so right now, every 3 by 3 square of pixels is 1 actual pixel inside FlashPunk. And that's a cool thing that you can do to make really pixely looking games, or to scale stuff up, all sorts of things. But we actually want to get this image moving. So entity has a function called update, and what we can do is we can override update. And if we actually want to check out what entity does in update, you'll see that it's completely empty. This is a empty function that allows us to do whatever we want. So we don't need to call super.update because entity is not actually doing anything, so there's no reason to call entities update. If you still don't understand what super means exactly, leave a comment. I can describe it a bit more in depth for you, and we can chat or whatever. But for the most part, I've kind of already explained it. But yeah. So sprite dot x. Oops, that's not what I want to do. I'm sorry. I want to do x plus equals 3, and I accidentally typed 4. Okay, plus equals 4. All right. So this is going to make the entity move 4 pixels a second. Or not a second, a frame. And we could also do x plus equals, let's do 3 here, and you'll see that it moves at a kind of diagonal. It looks like it's a perfect diagonal, but if we were to make the screen size a perfect square, you would see that it's not a perfect diagonal. Kind of an illusion there. So now we have moving images. They're not really controlled by us, which sucks, but we'll get into that in the next tutorial. So stick around and check out the tutorial tomorrow for how to get things moving. We're also going to be taking a look at the rest of the FlashPunk tutorial, so if you want to go look at those yourself and read, feel free to. They're just on useflashpunk.net. You can read through all of them, you can work through them, you can finish them all, but tomorrow I'm going to go over them and explain them similarly in depth to what it is, but we're going to add a few twists, and yeah. Alright, so you take care, and we'll catch you in the next FlashPunk tutorial.